What are some key issues facing the Wayne County Family Court? Find out next on Practical Law. Stay tuned. Welcome to Practical Law. I'm your host, family law and divorce attorney Henry Gorenbein. I'm also pleased to say that Practical Law is now being co-sponsored by the Oakland County Bar Association. Today on Practical Law, I'm pleased to welcome as my guest Wayne County Family Court Judge Martha Snow. Welcome to Practical Law.
Thank you, Henry. Pleasure to be here.
Judge Snow, why don't you tell us first of all a little bit about your background and who you are?
Okay. I have been on the bench for almost 2 years and Wayne County Circuit, and I was appointed in December, approximately 2 years ago. And I had the choice to be on the family division or the criminal division or juvenile division, and I chose to be on the family division. I had owned my own business for 16 years, and at the later part of my law practice, predominantly my practice was centered around family practice and custody, divorce, those kinds of issues. So I felt that the family division would be a good fit. I grew up in Traverse City, Michigan, and attended Central Michigan University, and then attended Wayne State Law School. Married, and have been married for 17 years, have 5 children, and it's a blended family. 3 of the older children are from a previous marriage of my husband's. And so it gives me quite I think, a unique background to be able to serve on the Wayne County Family Law Division because of my blended family and my years on the family practice.
Judge Snow, you made a transition from private practice to the family court. How much of a difference do you find sitting in basically, you're the one in charge, you're the person that everyone has to listen to, both attorneys and litigants. How much of a difference do you feel it is from your perspective?
It's different in that I get to hear both sides and make the final decision. But often as a family practitioner, and you may have found this or find this yourself, that you do hear both sides, whether it's in trial or mediation, and you can kind of get a sense of how you think each case should be resolved, whether it's a property issue or a custody issue or a parenting time issue. If you've been practicing for a while, you get how it should be resolved based on the law and based on some equity. So that's no different sitting on the bench. I still get that sense, and I'm able to help people hopefully get to what I believe, based on my experience and my life experiences and my law practice, is to get to the right point that I think that they should be at. So I'm able to help them, whereas before I was only able to help one of the litigants.
You find it's hard sometimes sitting there and you're no longer an advocate. You're the judge. You're calling the balls and strikes, for lack of a better analogy. And you find it hard sometimes to sit there and listen and not be able to involve, so to speak?
Well, sometimes it's a bit like the Jerry Springer show in the family court in Wayne County. Oftentimes there are no attorneys, and so it's the judge and 2 impropers. Often it's 2 impropers that don't have a significant educational background or even significant life experiences. Sometimes I'm dealing with very young litigants, and so I do get involved. I mean, you have to, unfortunately, explain to them what the law is. If they had attorneys, that attorney would have done that.
Right.
So you have to explain to them what the law is without making them feel that you're prejudiced one way or the other. And then you oftentimes will tell them how you think it should be resolved. If I was going to hear a trial and hear testimony from both of you and listen to any of your witnesses and see any documents that you wanted to produce to me, this is how I think it would likely result, or you should resolve it yourselves. And so I oftentimes am advocating for what I think the best resolution is, and nudging them along and asking them to go out in the hallway and maybe talk again. If they've got family members, because I encourage family members that are in the court to raise these people up, especially young people. Raise them up, hold them up, and help them be good parents.
That's a good attitude.
I
really
encourage
is.
them to go out in the hall and try to resolve issues based on some information that I had just given them.
Just now, why don't you tell our viewers exactly what is the scope of your docket? I mean, when we're talking family court, we're talking families, but why don't you tell us exactly what that encompasses in Wayne County in your courtroom?
Well, the big umbrella for me is divorce. It's the divorce court. And that's the biggie that we deal with, the big umbrella. But underneath that will be parenting time issues, custody issues of minor children, and property issues, property and debt. But oftentimes we have DP cases, which are paternity cases, or DS cases, which are support cases, and those don't include a marriage. And so we're dealing with support issues as well as the parenting time and custody pieces to those. But oftentimes they're under an umbrella of a marriage or a divorce, and that's why they come to us.
Why don't you tell our viewers about a typical day in your courtroom? I know courtroom starts, either 8:30 or 9,
Yeah.
depending. And
Our doors open at 8:30, and I think most of the courts in Wayne County, their doors are open at 8:30. At least that's what our chief tells us to do, our chief judge. So doors open at 8:30, and our clerk starts checking them in. The clerk sits to the, if I'm on the bench, she's sitting at the left of me, and she'll check everyone in with some help, maybe from the Wayne County Sheriff deputy who I have in my courtroom. Every court has a deputy that provides security for the judge and for everyone in that courtroom, and hopefully keeps things a little bit calm if things get out of hand. But start checking people in, and as soon as both sides are present on any given case, I'll take the bench and start hearing cases. I won't wait till everyone is checked in, or 2 or 3 cases. If there's one case ready, I want to get these people out, especially if they're paying an attorney. I want to get the attorney gone and on to their next case. And also litigants, a lot of them are coming in, taking time off of work, and if it's only, they have to take off a couple hours as opposed to a half a day or a full day, that's better for them. So I try to get them out. But we handle cases pretty fast in the courtroom until 12:30 when we break for lunch. And then the court is required to be closed from 12:30 to 2 unless I have a trial going on. And then we open back up 2 for business again until 4:30.
how often do you actually have full trials, whether a divorce or custody case? Is that common, or do most of them settle?
Most settle. Most either settle on their own through a mediation process, whether it's with a private attorney, or in Wayne County we have what we call the 7th floor mediation, which is a free mediation service, predominantly for impro-pers, but occasionally there's an attorney involved. And it's to, again, tell them what the law is, and then how they might best resolve whatever their issue is, whether it's property or parenting time, and get them to sign some sort of mediation agreement, and then come back before the judge. So that option, when they're impro-per or with a private attorney, most of them settle in those veins. Oftentimes, I share with them my thoughts on how I think that it should settle, whether it's on the record, or if there are 2 attorneys, I'll meet in chambers if they request it, and share with them my thoughts on how I think it should settle. If I heard a full trial and didn't hear anything different by way of evidence. So most settle, probably 90% settle, I would say.
Will you have status or pretrial conferences in chambers frequently? Were there attorneys?
If they request it, and if the attorneys behave, yes. And I'll leave my door open just for security purposes, unless I think otherwise that I should close my door. But my deputy is just a few feet away. But yeah, I'm happy to meet with attorneys. I'm happy to talk to the attorneys on the phone so they don't have to come down. for a settlement conference,
That's a nice thing to know.
or for case management. Case management is just giving us a roadmap oftentimes on how we're going to accomplish these folks' either divorce or custody dispute. So I don't see a reason to bring everyone down. I can do the paperwork over the phone. So often we can resolve things through the phone or in chambers.
That's a nice way to handle it because, you know, for people, when you drive down to court, whether it's from Plymouth or someplace else,
Right.
Driving time alone can be an hour or more. So just being able to do it on the phone, I really think that's a nice way to handle it.
Wayne County is, as you pointed out, a huge county.
Yes, it is.
In fact, we're the largest county in the state of Michigan, and I think the 5th largest in the country. So it's,
I didn't realize that.
It's a very big county, and our friend of the court is vast, and we have a lot of litigants that we service. So I'm happy to knock a few of these off on the phone.
Judge Snow, you mentioned earlier that you have a lot of improper cases. Do you know what percentage of your docket is improper, approximately?
I'd say probably 70%.
70%?
Yeah, it's huge. It's
Oh,
huge.
wow.
Yep.
I had no idea. I was figuring maybe a third.
No, and I had no idea either how large it was. And a substantial portion of those are the DS cases. DS cases are often started by Department of Social Services because a mom or a dad has come to them for some sort of aid, and if there's no child support order in place, then they need to initiate support.
That's, you know, I'm a little bit staggered that
I was staggered,
70%,
yeah. I
because,
was stunned when I took the bench.
Because my guess is in Oakland, it might be almost the reverse, 30%, if that. So,
Some mornings I might see one set of attorneys and just have an impro case after improper, with both litigants not being represented.
do you find it much more difficult to deal with improper versus attorneys?
Absolutely. I've heard other judges think the opposite for whatever reason. But yeah, I am not only having to educate these individuals, but then showing them how to get through the system. And it's a long process. It's not as if they were coming in for a traffic ticket. They're coming in for a divorce, which is a biggie. Or they're coming in to have someone help them figure out custody. A big thing, not just a district court traffic case where
Right.
I can get them, I guess, processed quickly. It's a long endeavor to get a divorce or to have someone decide your custody.
What do you find most difficult about what you do?
Most difficult? Well, it's heartbreaking listening to the struggles that some parents have, whether it's financial or their emotional difficulties, or if they're having medical difficulties, and then trying to raise children. Raising children is hard, and if you have some sort of disability, whether it's financial or physical or something else, it's very difficult to listen to it, and then also to try to figure out a resolution or problem solving for them, because they oftentimes don't have their own problem solving skill set. So trying to figure out where they can go to help get services, or it really, I feel like we're a bit of a branch of social services, because we try to get them free services for this or that because of the percentage of impropers we have, and their level of education and their level of economic status. So those are the most difficult for me, is trying to get them help. I can get them divorced, or I can figure out where what their custody arrangement should be, but then what?
Well, that's the thing. I mean, as I told you earlier, I have a book that's coming out in December that I've written, and it's called Divorce Demystified. And one of the things I write about is that divorce, when you as a judge pronounce a divorce, often that's only the beginning.
Yeah.
Especially when people can't let go or don't understand or are so angry or bitter, and they're divorced, but they want to carry on the battle year after year after year. And that's what's tragic from my perspective, at least.
Well, and that causes them to be in court.
Right.
Month after month, year after year, because they use the children oftentimes because of their emotional situation. They are not letting go, and they're not moving on, and the children are impacted, and they can't sometimes even agree to a particular activity, whether the child should be in soccer or not, or who pays it, or who's going to administer the medication. Are you going to give it on your parenting time also? When there's so many small issues and big issues that come about because they can't move on after a divorce. It continues litigation even after they're pronounced divorce.
What about domicile? Do you find those difficult? Because I try some of them, and it's like in a regular divorce, there's usually compromise. You can divide property, maybe someone gets a few extra dollars, spousal support, maybe a number of years, but you're dealing with money. With custody, again, the way we do it in Michigan, at least from my perspective, is you're counting overnights, basically. I mean, how many overnights will the children be with mom, how many with dad, and there's more and more of a trend towards not necessarily 50-50, but in many cases that or something close to it. It's far different than it was 25, 30 years ago. So when you have domicile, there's no compromise. So
no, that is one of the most difficult decisions I have, but it's easy based on the law. I don't think that the burden is very high for if it's the primary custodial parent wanting to move, and the child's life is going to be financially bettered, and a few other things. I don't think that the burden is very high, but I put much protection in for the parent that is left behind here,
right,
which is all summer, except for the first week and the last week of summer, so the child can get themselves back in a groove, so to speak, and then most of the breaks, and then anything else mom or dad can get along the way. Well, you see a lot of the change of domicile in Michigan, I think, the last handful of years because of the economy.
Because of the economy. I mean,
people going to Texas, Virginia, and then if they've got a new spouse, that spouse is in the military and they're stationed in another state. You see it a lot. I mean, I have one up tomorrow. So, and my goal is I hope that they resolve it. It's heartbreaking to watch
right,
the parent that's left behind in Michigan and how they essentially have to let go for a good part of the year, which is the school year, so the child can be successful in school. But most of those settle, surprisingly, with the assurance that they'll have substantial parenting time almost on all of the holidays and summer that the child has.
They're tough,
Yeah.
and I've litigated both sides of them, and the problem is, especially if you have a situation where the children spend a lot of time with each parent, even though it's a block of time during most of the summer breaks, it's still not the same. It's frequent back and forth.
Yeah, I have often preached to the parent that's leaving that their financial gain is not significant enough for me to order that domicile change be official, and if the other side can't agree, then you should make the decisions to stay here because it's not in the child's best interest not to have both parents active in their life, if both parents are, in fact, active in their life.
That's a good point, because, and again, what's interesting about what you do and what I do is the laws are there, but these are much more fact-specific, and every
Right.
case is different.
Right.
What about attorneys? I mean, being an attorney, I find, at least in my perspective, from my perspective and in my practice, I think people are more acrimonious, including attorneys now than maybe 10, 20 years ago. What do you find from your seat on the bench?
I don't know if I see more of the fighting between attorneys. I get a kick out of attorneys. I loved practicing law. I love being a judge. And it's such a phenomenal education having a law degree. The way you analyze things and the way you want to engage in conversation about the law or just about anything. So I get a kick out of listening to attorneys present their cases and engage in their art. And it really is an art. It's a bit of acting.
That's
and
true.
As a judge, I kind of take a step back and don't get involved in the dynamics that are going on between the two attorneys, because some of it is acting, and it's part of a performance, I think. So I don't get too engaged in any theatrics. I just am so impressed by most attorneys that come before me.
That's good. What do you find, well, first, what do you expect from litigants who come to your courtroom? Are there certain dress codes? Are there certain ways of acting that you expect that we can convey to our viewers?
You know, I don't flip out when someone has jeans on or their cell phone goes off, because occasionally that's going to happen, or they have an occupation where they are going to be wearing jeans or some sort of casual uniform. But everybody knows how to act, I think, in court, or they should. It's a respectful demeanor. It should be respectful dress, that you're covered appropriately, or, you know, not dressed slovenly. So I just think acting respectfully for the process, not for me as a judge, but for the process, because it's very serious. You're not in court for fun and games. You're there for a very serious reason, especially in family court. Your children are the most precious thing to you, and if you don't present as if you are believe that that's the case, then it's impactful to a judge. I mean, we're human beings.
Just know, Wayne County demographically has one of the larger Islamic populations outside of the Middle East. Not the larger, I thought at one time it is, but I think it might be third in the country or fourth. You've got a large Hispanic population and also many other people from all over the world. Do you find the use of interpreters happening more and more frequently?
I do. When I was a practicing lawyer, I don't recall seeing one very often, an interpreter, but I am amazed at how many interpreters we have in our courtroom for both the Arabic population and as well as the Hispanic population. Occasionally we have Chinese or some other Asian dialect, Korean we've had, but predominantly it's Arabic and the Hispanic, and it's quite frequently that we have interpreters in our courtroom, and it's difficult. They have to be sworn in first, the interpreters, and then they assist us in swearing in the litigants, and it's much slower because everybody has to talk slower so the interpreter can hear and repeat, and it doubles, triples the time. So I have seen a lot of interpreters, and I don't know if it's just because I'm up there and I'm seeing the cases, or there's been an uptick in our area as far as those two cultures.
Maybe both.
Maybe, yeah, maybe.
But yeah, because you're on the bench now, you see a lot more, because as an attorney, you know, you handle so many cases per year on the bench. I mean, I don't know, is your docket maybe 1,000 or more cases, I bet?
Yeah, you know, Judge McCarthy is our presiding for the family division, and she was shocked she was running numbers to our chief judge on how many cases each judge has, and I don't recall, she just told me yesterday, I don't recall the specific number that each judge in the family division averages, but it's over 1,000.
Yeah, I'm not surprised.
And many of them are active, as I said, just because we accomplish their divorce for them, or what we believe to be a final judgment. Many of the cases have ongoing litigation post-judgment for a variety of reasons. And sometimes I do feel like I am going to be the third parent in this family for the next 10, 15 years until their children are 18 or 19 and a half, if they're still in high school. Because it's clear that the parents are not moving on and resolving their issues on their own.
That's sad, and again, I see that a lot as a litigant. What about the use of, you know, as you said, you become the third parent. In Wayne County, do you use parenting coordinators or GALs much?
No, we don't. If parties come in and they can afford a GAL, and to have an additional professional looking at what's good for the children, that's fine. But in Wayne County, the people that come before me typically are litigants that don't have a substantial marital estate and are able to fund those. And the funding for public funding for GALs is very, very limited in Wayne County. There's probably enough money for each judge to be able to appoint one GAL a year. So that's not significant compared to how many cases we have. So we don't see very many guardian ad litems, or I don't often use parenting time coordinators. It's just my own preference. I don't know if other judges do in Wayne County. They may, but I don't use them, either of those.
I think it depends. I know in Oakland, some judges will use them. A lot of judges prefer not to, just saying, you know, I'm the judge, I'll make the decisions.
Right. I don't know.
I know it's difficult, and it's like, you know, but it sounds like you're very hands-on, which I think is a good thing. And, you know, what about mediation? Again, with people who don't have money, you really can't send them to private mediators either.
No, you can't. There are a few mediators that have volunteered to do low-cost mediations for impropers, not for litigants that have attorneys, but for impropers. Then we have this 7th floor mediation that is free. And then I'm happy to tell these folks, sit down if they're impropers, and I'll call you last, and let's knock something out. And I'm happy to roll up my sleeves and, of course, do it on the record. But try to work something out for them. Lots of times they just want to be heard, and they want to complain about the other person, and I just, you know, stiffen up and listen to it, and encourage the other one to stiffen up and listen to it. And oftentimes I'm able to resolve them. I have a judicial assistant that will meet with the impropers first and tell them what the law is, and then see if you can go out and settle, and just to prime it a little bit and get them talking. Oftentimes we can settle them. It's amazing to me.
You've got a wonderful approach. We're out of time, believe it or not.
No way, I'm not done.
I know, I wish we had more time, but Judge Martha Snow, I want to thank you for being my guest on Practical Law. I really enjoyed having you. I want to thank our viewers for watching Practical Law.